This is the story of Audie Murphy, the real-life James Bond, aka America's most decorated soldier and the man that Hollywood forgot. Most people know him as a movie star, but before that he was just a farm boy from Texas who killed hundreds of German soldiers with his own hands. This man was incredibly brave and selfless, but what happened to him after the war? Let's find out in today's episode of Fake Tank Battles. Our story begins in the sleepy town of Kingston, Texas in 1925. Where a baby boy was born to parents that were sharecroppers working on a farm. They didn't have enough money to name him after one of the Alice brothers, like most other poor families in the region did at the time. So his name would be a combination of his two grandfathers, which resulted in the birth of Elvis Presley's favorite soldier, Audie Murphy. Growing up, Audie didn't have much of a childhood. He had 3 younger siblings that needed looking after, and as soon as he was old enough, he got to work helping out on the farm. He was very close to his mother, and she did her best to give her children as much love and affection as she could. But his father was a violent alcoholic and routinely beat his wife and children. It got so bad that when Audie was just 14 years old, his dad nearly beat him to death because he wanted more food. In response, Audie took his father's shotgun out into the fields and shot it multiple times to scare him. When he came back inside, his father had left and never returned. So Audie effectively stopped speaking to his father for the rest of his life. When he was just 16 years old, Audie enlisted in the army. At first, his mother thought that he was going to basic training, so she packed him a bag full of food and gave it to him. She was shocked when he told her he was actually shipping out to Europe to fight the Germans. At the time, there were numerous ways to avoid the draft, such as lying about your health or enlisting in one of the less dangerous branches of the military. But Jody couldn't do any of those things because he desperately wanted to prove himself and win the respect of his father. Sadly, this mission wouldn't be successful. Arriving in Europe, Murphy was deployed to the front lines. And while he had some training, he was still essentially a child fighting in one of the largest wars in history. Fortunately, he was a quick learner and a natural soldier, and he quickly rose through the ranks. By the end of the war, he would receive every military decoration the United States had to offer, including 4 Purple Hearts. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. After fighting in the Battle of the Bulge, something remarkable happened. Audie received a package from home with a letter attached to it that read, "Cash this check for $10 for each point earned. You've earned 10 points. See that you get paid?" Attached to that letter was a check from his mother for $100. He called her to ask why she sent him the money. To which she replied, "You're going to need some spending money. You can get anything you want with that." And then she hung up the phone. He was confused because he thought that she was poor. But it turned out that she had been saving up for many years to send him this money. When she learned that he was being paid just $50 per month plus rations, she cashed in her life savings and sent him $100. As you can imagine, he was very moved by his mother's sacrifice, and that motivated him to become even braver in combat. In January of 1945, during the Battle of Holtzwihr, France, Audie single-handedly held off an entire company of German soldiers. In total, he would kill over 100 Nazis that day, which is equivalent to almost 30 tanks. And the only reason he survived the attack was because his squad mates were hiding behind a wall. Otherwise, he likely would have been killed. As a reward for his bravery, Audie was promoted to sergeant and given command of an entire platoon. His squad mates loved him because he treated them like his brothers. He also had an incredible sense of humor, which helped boost morale during the darkest days of the war. Unfortunately, this would also lead to him being in trouble with his superiors, because sometimes he would take his men outside of the trenches to play poker, blackjack, and other games, which made his squad mates happy. But if they caught him gambling, he would get into big trouble because officers weren't allowed to gamble. On April 3, 1945, the Germans launched a massive counterattack against the Americans, but their forces were no match for Audie's platoon. He used clever tactics to outmaneuver and destroy the enemy, proving to be an exceptional leader. But his luck would soon run out. While fighting in northern Italy, he and his unit were pinned down by a German machine gun nest. He set out to eliminate the threat, but as he crested a hill to get a better vantage point, he walked straight into an ambush. He was severely wounded and ended up spending a month in the hospital recovering. While he survived, he would never be the same again. As soon as he recovered, he tried to return to his unit, but his doctor said that he needed to spend another 3 months recovering. So instead of staying at the hospital, he hitchhiked to his unit. Of course, he was reprimanded for leaving the hospital without permission, but his squad mates were thrilled to see him return. For the remainder of the war, he continued to fight, proving to be unstoppable. In total, he was involved in 6 major operations and single-handedly saved countless lives. He was responsible for killing over 200 German soldiers. Finally, the war was over, and Audie returned home to the United States, a war hero. He had been awarded the highest military decoration a soldier can receive, the Medal of Honor from President Truman. But unfortunately, he wasn't greeted by the parade and celebration that he had imagined. The U.S. had just dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan, which resulted in the deaths of over 200,000 civilians. And as far as the American public was concerned, World War II was already in the past. Veterans like Audie were effectively forgotten. And to make matters worse, he had developed PTSD and spent most of his days drinking heavily and having panic attacks. In the hopes of putting his life back on track, he enrolled in college on the GI Bill. But he failed to make it through because of his ongoing health issues. Instead, he joined the Screen Actors Guild to make some quick cash. Little did he know that he would eventually become one of the biggest movie stars in Hollywood. At the time, there was a lot of anti-German sentiment in the U.S., and very few people were willing to hire German actors, even though many of them were American citizens. In response, Hollywood created a new type of character that audiences could root against. The Mexican, Audie fit the role perfectly because he had spent several years living among farmers in Texas, learning how to speak the language fluently. One of his earliest roles was in the film I-6000, and he quickly became one of the highest-paid actors in Hollywood, starring alongside John Wayne in numerous films such as The Red Badge of Courage, To Hell and Back, and The Fighting CBs. He was also in The Great Locomotive Chase, Desperate Journey, Firing Squad, and most notably, The Dirty Dozen. Over the next 2 decades, he starred in more than 40 films, cementing his legacy as a Hollywood legend. But while he appeared to be at the top of the world, the reality was that he was still battling severe PTSD. He married 5 times, but each marriage ended in divorce. And he struggled to control his alcoholism throughout the majority of his adult life. It's a sad thing to say, but while he was considered a war hero, he didn't receive the support and recognition that he deserved. In fact, he was so ashamed of his mental health issues that he kept them secret for most of his life. He didn't even tell his own children that he had been a soldier. And to this day, nobody knows the true extent of his accomplishments in combat, because he destroyed all of his personal records before he passed away in 1971. What's your opinion on Audie Murphy? Is there anyone else we should cover? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.